The courtroom roared with laughter when the barefoot girl in a faded dress looked up at the paralyzed judge and said, "Let my father go free, and I will make you walk again." They called her crazy. 47 days later he took his first step. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The gavel never fell the same way after the stroke. Judge Benjamin Hawthorne used to bring it down like thunder. Now it was a dull tap from a man who could no longer feel the weight of anything in his hands. 3 years since the blood clot stole his legs, his marriage, and every soft part of him that once existed. Courtroom 7B had become his kingdom of wheels and resentment. Black robe perfectly pressed, silver hair severe, eyes the color of winter steel. He looked like justice itself had been carved from ice. Today he was sentencing Adewale Okeke, quiet, dignified mechanic, accused of stealing chemotherapy drugs from the hospital where his wife lay dying. The evidence was circumstantial, the public defender unprepared, the prosecutor ambitious. Benjamin had already decided. 20 years. Mercy was a luxury the paralyzed could not afford. In the back row, clutching her father's grease-stained jacket like a life jacket, sat 12-year-old LAmara Okeke. Her dress had been her mother's, cut short with kitchen scissors. Her shoes were 2 different sizes, both cracked. She had not cried since the night her mother whispered goodbye, but today the tears threatened again. She could feel them burning behind her eyes like hot coals. Her mother's last words had not been about dying. They had been about living. "Amara," she had rasped, fingers brushing her daughter's cheek, "you carry the old gift. The one my grandmother had. When the time comes, don't be afraid to use it. Promise me." Amara had promised. Now the time had come. Benjamin's voice cut through the room, cold and final. "Will the defendant please rise?" Adewale stood, thin shoulders proud even in chains. Benjamin lifted the gavel. "Having been found guilty, Your Honor." The voice was small but sharp enough to slice the air in half. Every head turned. Amara was already walking down the aisle, barefoot because the left shoe had finally given up that morning. The bailiff reached for her, but she slipped past like water. Benjamin's eyes narrowed. "Young lady, return to your seat immediately." She didn't. She kept walking until she stood directly in front of the bench, looking up at the man everyone feared. "Let my dad go free," she said, voice trembling but clear as morning bells, "and I swear on my mother's grave, I will heal you." For one heartbeat the room was silent. Then the prosecutor barked a laugh. Jurors snickered. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Village witchcraft nonsense." Benjamin felt the familiar flare of rage. Another desperate trick. Another child thinking tears could sway justice. "Remove her," he ordered. But Amara did something no one in that courtroom had ever seen. She placed both small dirty hands on the front edge of the judge's bench, right over the seal of the Federation, and leaned forward until her eyes locked with his. "I'm not lying," she whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "You haven't felt your legs in 3 years. The doctor said never again. But I can change that. I can make you stand. Just let my daddy come home." The laughter grew crueler. Benjamin stared down at her. Something in those fierce, exhausted eyes made his chest tighten in a way painkillers had never managed. He should have had her dragged out. Instead he heard himself say, "Court will recess for 15 minutes. The gavel fell softer than anyone expected. When the room emptied, Benjamin remained behind the bench, alone except for the child who refused to leave. "You have 10 seconds to explain yourself before I charge you with contempt," he said quietly. Amara climbed the single step to the platform. No one stopped her this time, and stood beside his wheelchair. She was so close he could smell wood smoke in her hair. "My mama died because we couldn't afford the medicine," she said, voice low. "My daddy didn't steal. He only moved the boxes so the rich patients wouldn't notice a few missing. But even if he did, you're hurting worse than he ever could. I see it in your eyes. You're trapped too." Benjamin's jaw clenched. "You know nothing about my pain. I know you haven't hugged anyone since it happened," she said simply. "I know you sleep in that chair some nights because the bed feels too big. I know you're angry at God, at doctors, at yourself. And I know I can fix your legs, if you let my daddy fix his life." He should have called security. Instead he asked, voice rough, "How?" She reached out and laid her small hand on his knee, right where sensation ended like a slammed door. For the first time in 3 years Benjamin felt warmth. Not imagination. Not hope. Actual warmth, spreading like sunrise under his skin. His breath caught. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "That's just the hello," she whispered. "The rest comes if you keep your promise." Then she stepped back, wiped her face with the sleeve of her too big dress, and walked out of the courtroom before anyone could stop her. Benjamin sat frozen, staring at his legs. For the first time in 1,000 days the ice had cracked. The laughter had barely died when the courtroom doors slammed shut behind Amara. Benjamin Hawthorne sat alone on the bench, the silence louder than any verdict he had ever delivered. His right knee still tingled, a ghost of warmth that refused to fade. He pressed his palm hard against the spot, half expecting the sensation to vanish like every false hope the doctors had sold him. It didn't. It grew. He wheeled himself to the side door, shoved it open, and barked at his clerk, "Find the girl. Bring her and her father to my chambers. Now." 15 minutes later, Adewale Okeke stood handcuffed between two guards, confusion and fear etched deep into his face. Amara stood in front of him, small shoulders squared, chin high. The chambers smelled of leather, old books, and the faint metallic scent of desperation. Benjamin locked the door himself. The click sounded final. "Sit," he ordered. There was only one visitor chair. Adewale sat. Amara remained standing beside her father, her hand resting protectively on his arm. Benjamin rolled closer until the wheels of his chair almost touched the girl's bare toes. "Show me again," he said, voice low, dangerous. Amara didn't flinch. She knelt, placed both hands on his motionless knees and closed her eyes. This time the warmth was fire. It started at the point of contact and surged upward like liquid sunlight, racing through dead nerves, waking muscles that had forgotten their names. Benjamin gasped, an actual ragged sound torn from his throat. His fingers clawed the armrests. For one terrifying, impossible second his right foot twitched inside the polished black shoe. Adewale's eyes went wide. "Amara?" She opened her eyes, exhausted but shining. "It's only the beginning," she whispered. "The full healing takes time. 47 days of touching, praying, and believing. But only if Daddy walks out of here today a free man." Benjamin's chest rose and fell too fast. He stared at his traitorous leg as though it belonged to a stranger. "You're asking me to throw away my career," he said through clenched teeth. "To dismiss charges because a child claims magic." "Not magic," Amara corrected gently. "Grace. My mama said it's the same grace that made Lazarus walk. She said it lives in our bloodline, but it only works when we give something we can't get back." Benjamin laughed once, sharp, broken. "And you're willing to give a stranger back his legs for a father who might still be guilty?" Adewale started to protest, but Amara lifted her hand. He fell silent. "I watched my mother die because the medicine was locked behind money we didn't have," she said. "I'm tired of watching good people break because the world is cruel. You're a good man who got broken too. Let me fix one thing. Please." Benjamin looked at Adewale. The man's eyes were wet, but he didn't beg. He simply bowed his head and said, "Whatever my daughter promises, I will spend the rest of my life making worthy." The room held its breath. Benjamin wheeled to the window. Outside, reporters were already gathering like vultures. One leaked photo, one whispered rumor, and his reputation would be shredded. 30 years on the bench, gone. He thought of the nights he had stared at the ceiling, begging a God he no longer believed in for just one more step. One more chance to feel the ground under his own power. One more morning where he didn't have to be lifted like a child. He turned back. "If I do this," he said slowly, "and tomorrow you disappear, I will hunt you both down and lock you away for the rest of your lives. Do you understand?" Amara nodded. Benjamin picked up the phone on his desk, dialed the clerk of court. His voice didn't shake. "Case number C or 2025-187, the state versus Adewale Okeke. Charges dismissed for insufficient evidence. Release the defendant immediately. No press statements." He hung up before anyone could argue. Adewale's knees buckled. The guards caught him. Tears streamed down his face as he pulled his daughter into his arms, whispering thanks in Yoruba, in English, in broken sobs. Amara let herself be held for only a second. Then she pulled away and walked straight to Benjamin. "Tomorrow at sunrise," she said. "My father's workshop behind the old market. Bring no one. Tell no one. 47 days. Every morning. You come alone or the warmth stops." Benjamin stared at her, this tiny general in a torn dress. "And if I refuse?" She smiled, sad, ancient, heartbreaking. "Then you stay in that chair forever and I'll know I tried. But I don't think you will refuse, Your Honor. Because for the first time in 3 years you just felt hope." She took her father's hand and walked out. Benjamin sat alone again. He pressed both palms to his knees. The warmth lingered like a promise. Or a bomb waiting to go off. The next morning, Benjamin Hawthorne did not go to the workshop. He sat in his darkened study, still in the wheelchair, staring at the phone he had smashed against the wall at 3 a.m. The screen was spider-webbed, but the last message still glowed through the cracks. Unknown number. Sunrise has come and gone, Your Honor. The warmth is already fading. We will wait one more day. After that, the door closes forever. LAmara. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes he felt it again. The fire racing through dead nerves, the twitch in his foot that no MRI had ever explained. At 4:17 a.m. he had wheeled himself to the full-length mirror and tried to stand. Nothing. Just the same useless legs dangling like sandbags. The warmth was retreating, leaving cold accusation in its wake. By 6 a.m. his driver arrived. Benjamin barked that he was taking a personal day, the first in 12 years. The man knew better than to ask questions. At the old market, LAmara swept the concrete floor of her father's tiny workshop while Adewale repaired a neighbor's generator. They did not speak of the judge. They had learned long ago that hope spoken too loudly breaks first. But LAmara felt the absence like a bruise. Every creak of the gate made her heart leap, then sink again. By noon she sat on an upturned crate, chin on her knees. "He's afraid, Papa," she said quietly. Adewale wiped grease from his hands. "Powerful men are always afraid of being seen weak, 8 a.m. Give him time." "I gave him a miracle," she whispered. "He gave me silence." Across the city, Benjamin was drowning in his own silence. His sister Claire, his only remaining family, had come over uninvited. She found him still in yesterday's shirt, whiskey untouched because he couldn't feel drunk anymore anyway. "Ben, talk to me. The clerks are saying you dismissed a slam dunk case yesterday. People are asking questions." "Let them ask," he snapped. She knelt, tried to take his hand. He pulled away. "Whatever is happening, you don't have to do it alone." He laughed, bitter and cracked. "That's exactly what I have to do, Claire. Alone. Or I lose everything." She left crying. He hated himself more. That afternoon the prosecutor, Daniel Okoye, arrived with a thick file and a shark smile. "Judge Hawthorne, a word?" He didn't wait to be invited in. "I'm refiling the Okeke case. New evidence. And I'm asking the Judicial Council to investigate your abrupt dismissal. Conflict of interest, perhaps?" Benjamin's blood turned to ice. "What do you want, Daniel?" Okoye leaned in. "Recuse yourself from any case involving the Okeke family. Publicly. And I'll forget I ever saw a little girl whispering in your ear yesterday." Benjamin stared at him until the younger man shifted uncomfortably. "Get out of my house." After Okoye left, Benjamin wheeled to the safe in his study, opened it with shaking fingers, and took out the one thing he had never let anyone see: a child's drawing, crayon on cheap paper. A stick-figure family holding hands under a yellow sun. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, "To Daddy. We will walk on the beach again. Love, Lily." His daughter. 8 years old when the stroke hit. She had waited every day for him to stand up and chase her through the waves like before. He never did. She stopped visiting 2 years ago. He clutched the drawing to his chest and felt something tear open inside him, something that had been cauterized by pride and pain. That night he sat on the balcony until the city lights blurred. At 11:47 p.m. he opened his phone, new one, delivered that afternoon, and typed a message he deleted 6 times. "Finally. I will come tomorrow. Same time. No guards. No drivers. If anyone follows me, the deal is off. Do not make me regret this." He hit send before the fear could stop him. On the other side of town, Amara's phone lit up under her pillow. She read the message once, twice, then pressed the phone to her heart and smiled in the dark. But the smile faded quickly. Because she had not told the judge the whole truth. The healing was real. But every inch she regained would cost her something she might never get back. And day one had already slipped away. The sky was still bruised with night when Benjamin wheeled his chair through the narrow alley behind the old market. No driver. No security. Just him, a blanket over his lap to hide the tremor in his hands, and the absurd hope that a 12-year-old girl could do what 23 specialists had failed to. The workshop gate creaked open before he touched it. Amara stood there in the same faded dress, barefoot, holding a kerosene lantern that painted gold across her tired face. "You came," she said, soft as forgiveness. "I gave my word," he answered, voice rough from no sleep. She stepped aside. He rolled past her into the small courtyard. Adewale was nowhere in sight. Only a single plastic chair waited beside a low wooden stool. A tin kettle steamed on a charcoal burner. The air smelled of engine oil, wet earth, and something sweet, like frangipani after rain. Benjamin's pride tried to rise. This is insane. You are a high court judge sitting in a mechanic's backyard before dawn because a child promised magic. LAmara closed the gate, slid the bolt, and turned to him. 46 days left, she said. We begin now. She knelt, rolled up his trouser legs without asking permission, and placed both small hands on his bare knees. The warmth returned instantly, stronger, deeper, almost painful. Benjamin's breath hitched. His toes curled involuntarily inside his socks. Every morning at 5:15, she continued, eyes closed, for exactly 33 minutes. No more, no less. You must be alone with me. If anyone watches, even your sister, the grace stops. That is the rule. Benjamin found his voice. And your father? He knows only that you are helping us with legal things. He must never know the price. Her voice cracked on the last word. What price? He demanded. She opened her eyes, ancient, frightened eyes in a child's face. Every step you take again, I lose a little of mine. My legs will grow heavy. Maybe one day they will stop working at all. Mama warned me. She said the gift always asks for balance. Benjamin recoiled as if slapped. No, absolutely not. I will not trade a child's future for my own. He reached for the wheels to leave. LAmara grabbed the armrest with surprising strength. You already did, she said fiercely. The moment you freed my father, the exchange began. You can't give that back. The only choice now is whether we finish it, or whether we both stay broken. Silence stretched, thick and terrible. Benjamin stared at her. Why would you do this? Because my father smiled again yesterday, she whispered. Because when Mama died I promised her I would keep him safe. And because, her voice dropped to almost nothing. Because when I touched your knees yesterday I felt how lonely you are. Like a big empty house with all the lights turned off. Nobody should live like that. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Benjamin felt something inside him fracture wide open. He stayed. Every morning for the next 3 weeks he came before the city woke. He learned the rhythm of the market before traders arrived, the way the mosque's call to prayer drifted over tin roofs, the exact minute the first rooster lost its mind. LAmara never missed a day, even when fever from bad water kept her shaking. She would lay her hands on his legs, pray in a mixture of Yoruba and English too soft to follow, and pour light into the darkness of his body. By day 9 he could wiggle all 10 toes. By day 15 he could stand for 6 seconds with her arms around his waist, her cheek pressed to his chest, both of them trembling. By day 21 he took 3 unaided steps across the courtyard while Adewale was away buying parts, and LAmara laughed so hard she cried, then collapsed against the wall, legs suddenly too weak to hold her. Benjamin caught her before she hit the ground. You're getting worse, he said, panic rising. I know, she panted. But you're getting better. That's the deal. He carried her inside, she weighed almost nothing, and laid her on the narrow mattress that served as her bed. For the first time he saw how thin she had become, how the dress now hung off sharp collarbones. Enough, he said fiercely. We stop. No. She clutched his shirt with desperate fingers. 25 days left. You're so close. Please, Your Honor, Benjamin, I can finish this. He had never heard her use his first name before. It broke him. That night he sat in the workshop long after she fell asleep, watching her chest rise and fall too fast. Adewale came home, startled to find the judge there. She needs a doctor, Benjamin said without greeting. Adewale's face hardened. We have no money for her. I will pay. Benjamin's voice left no room for pride. Anything she needs. Anything. Adewale studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Something unspoken passed between the two men. Gratitude, suspicion, and the beginning of respect. From that night on, the workshop at dawn belonged to Benjamin and LAmara, but the evenings belonged to something new, 2 broken families learning how to hold each other up. And every day the judge grew stronger. Every day the little girl grew weaker. Neither of them knew how to stop what they had started. Day 28. The courtyard smelled of rain and hot iron. Benjamin arrived earlier than usual, carrying a paper bag of warm akara and a bottle of chilled malt. LAmara was already waiting, sitting on the low stool, legs stretched out in front of her like they belonged to someone else. She tried to stand when she saw him, but her knees buckled. He caught her just in time. You're not eating enough, he said, voice rough with worry. I'm fine, she'll eat. He set the food down and knelt, in front of her. The movement was clumsy, his muscles still remembering how to be legs, but he did it. He took both her small feet in his large hands. Your ankles are swollen. Your pulse is racing. This ends today unless you tell me the whole truth. LAmara looked away. There's nothing more to tell. LAmara. He said her name the way a father says it when the lie is unbearable. She started to cry, silent tears that tore him in half. My mama didn't just die of cancer, she whispered. She died because she used the gift too many times. On strangers. On neighbors. On anyone who asked. Every healing took a piece of her strength until there was nothing left for herself. She made me swear I would only ever use it once, for something that mattered more than my own life. Benjamin felt the world tilt. And you chose me, he said, voice cracking. I chose my father's freedom, she corrected. But then, I chose you too. He pulled her into his arms and held her the way he had not held anyone since Lily was small. She cried into his shirt, tiny fists clutching the fabric like she was drowning. That afternoon he canceled court, sent his driver away and stayed in the workshop. Adewale found them hours later, the judge sitting on the floor with his daughter asleep against his chest, her legs draped across his lap while he gently massaged circulation back into them. Adewale froze in the doorway. What is this? He asked, voice low and dangerous. Benjamin met his eyes. The truth. He told him everything, the bargain, the exchange, the 47 days, the cost. He left nothing out. When he finished, the only sound was the distant call of evening prayer. Adewale's hands shook with rage and grief. He stepped forward as if to strike the judge, then dropped to his knees instead. You knew, he choked. You knew what this would do to my child and you let her. I tried to stop, Benjamin said quietly. She wouldn't let me. Adewale gathered LAmara into his arms. She stirred, confused, then saw her father's tears and began crying again. That night Benjamin went home and did something he had not done in 15 years. He opened the box under his bed. Inside were photographs, hospital bracelets, a tiny knit cap. Lily at 2 days old. Lily at 5, laughing on his shoulders at the beach. Lily at 8, the last picture before the stroke, standing beside his hospital bed holding the crayon drawing he still kept in his safe. He had never told anyone the full story. His wife, Mara, had left 6 months after the stroke. She couldn't bear the silence, the rage, the man who pushed everyone away. She took Lily and moved to Canada. The divorce papers cited emotional abandonment. He signed them without a fight. He had not spoken to his daughter in 4 years. He opened his laptop, found Lily's old email address, still active miraculously, and began typing with fingers that had forgotten tenderness. Lily, I don't know if you will ever read this. I don't deserve for you to. I was a terrible father after the accident. I thought if I stayed hard, the pain couldn't reach me. I was wrong. It reached everyone but me. A little girl here is teaching me how to be human again. She is paying a price I never should have let her pay. I am learning to walk, Lily. Really walk. And the first thing I want to do with these new legs is come find you and beg, on my knees if I have to, for one more chance to be your dad. I'm so sorry. I love you more than these broken words can ever say. That. He hit send before cowardice could stop him. Then he drove back to the workshop at midnight. Adewale opened the gate, eyes red. She's burning with fever, he said. She keeps asking for you. Benjamin carried her to the only clinic that would take cash and no questions. He paid for tests, antibiotics, for fluids. He sat beside her narrow bed all night while she drifted in and out, murmuring in Yoruba. At 3 a.m. she woke fully, looked at him with glassy eyes and said, You told Papa. I had to. Are you leaving now? He took her hand. Never again. She smiled weakly. Good. Because I found something today. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper, old and soft from handling. It was a newspaper clipping from 6 years ago. A photograph of Judge Benjamin Hawthorne at a hospital fundraiser, smiling proudly beside a little girl in pigtails receiving chemotherapy. The caption read, Honorable Justice Hawthorne and daughter Lily, 7, celebrate the opening of the new pediatric oncology wing made possible by his family's donation. LAmara's voice was barely a breath. Mama kept this. She said one day the circle would close. She prayed for the sad man in the wheelchair to find joy again. Benjamin stared at the photo of himself, whole, happy, alive, holding a bald, grinning Lily. And for the first time in years, Judge Benjamin Hawthorne put his head down on the hospital blanket and sobbed like a child who had finally been found. Day 31 dawned soft and golden, the first morning in weeks that LAmara did not wake gasping with fever. Benjamin arrived carrying a small paper bag and a smile he hadn't worn in years. Inside the bag were 2 warm muamua wrapped in banana leaves and a single, perfect orange. He peeled it with careful fingers while she watched from the mattress, propped up on pillows Adewale had bought with the judge's money. Vitamin C, he declared, feeding her a segment. Juice ran down her chin. He wiped it with the sleeve of his shirt without thinking. The gesture was so natural it startled them both. Adewale had gone to open the workshop early, giving them the courtyard to themselves. For the first time, there were no chains of guilt or fear between them, only the quiet hum of something growing. Amara's legs were still weak, but the swelling had gone down. She could wiggle her toes again. Benjamin knelt, gracefully now, and laid his hands over her knees the way she had done for him so many mornings. Today the grace flows the other way, he said softly. He closed his eyes and prayed, awkward, halting words at first, then steadier. He prayed in the plain, desperate language of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to give. Warmth left his palms and poured into her skin. Amara's breath caught, tears slipped from beneath her lashes. When he opened his eyes she was staring at him like he was the miracle. "You kept some," she whispered. "You kept the gift." "Apparently it's contagious," he answered, voice thick. They laughed, real, belly-deep laughter that echoed off the corrugated roof and made the neighbor's dog bark in confusion. Later, when the sun climbed higher, he carried her to the plastic chair in the courtyard and sat on the ground beside her. She rested her head on his shoulder the way Lily used to. "Tell me about your daughter," she said. So he did. Every story he had buried. The way Lily sang off-key Disney songs in the shower, how she once tried to rescue a bird with a broken wing and cried for days when it died, the bedtime ritual of "one more story, Daddy, please." He spoke until his voice cracked and the tears came again, but this time they were gentle. Amara listened without interrupting. When he finished she reached up and touched the lines around his eyes. "She still loves you," she said with absolute certainty. "Mamas and daddies don't stop being that just because they're far away." That afternoon Lily's reply arrived. One line. "I never stopped loving you either, Dad. Come home when you can walk. I want to see it with my own eyes. Lily." Benjamin read it aloud, voice shaking. Amara squealed, an actual 12-year-old squeal, and threw her arms around his neck. He spun her slowly in the courtyard, her feet dangling inches above the ground, both of them laughing and crying at once. In the evenings now, Adewale joined them. The 3 of them ate together on a mat under the lone mango tree. Jollof rice, pepper soup, whatever Benjamin brought from the best restaurants in the city. Adewale told stories of growing up in the village, of meeting his wife at a bus stop in the rain, of the day Amara was born and how the midwife said she came out smiling. Benjamin told stories of courtroom dramas and the first time he ever put on the black robe and felt 10 feet tall. They laughed until their sides hurt. One night Adewale brought out an old guitar with 3 strings missing. He played anyway, fingers sure and gentle, singing a high-life song about love finding you when you stop running. Benjamin's eyes never left Amara as she swayed in time, eyes closed, face lit by lantern and starlight. When the song ended, Adewale set the guitar down and looked at the judge. "You are welcome here always," he said simply. "Chair or no chair. Rich man or poor man. You are family now." Benjamin could only nod, throat too full for words. On day 39, Amara walked 10 steps unaided across the courtyard while Benjamin held his breath. On day 41 he walked 20 steps while she clapped like he had conquered Everest. On day 43 they walked together, slow, careful, side by side, all the way to the gate and back. Her hand in his arm around her shoulders. That night she fell asleep on the mat with her head in his lap. He stroked her cornrows and whispered the lullaby he used to sing to Lily, the one he thought he had forgotten. Adewale watched from the doorway, eyes soft. "See," he murmured. "Love at last. Unexpected, stubborn, impossible love." Benjamin looked down at the sleeping child and felt his heart, scarred, thawed, and beating again, answer with a single, unshakable truth. Yes. Day 44. The photograph appeared on the front page of the Vanguard at 6:03 a.m. Paralyzed High Court judge caught in secret meetings with family of man he freed. Below the screaming headline, a grainy night shot of Benjamin carrying Amara in his arms from the clinic, her head against his shoulder, his face stripped of every judicial mask. Another photo showed them laughing together in the courtyard, his hand on her cornrows. A third captured the moment they walked side by side at sunset, her tiny hand swallowed in his. The prosecutor, Daniel Okoye, had wasted no time. By 7:15 a.m. the Judicial Service Commission announced an emergency inquiry. By 8 a.m. television stations looped the images with ominous music. By 9 a.m. Benjamin's phone was dead from threats, interview requests, and one heartbreaking message from his sister Claire. "They're saying you bought the child, Ben. Please tell me it isn't what it looks like." Benjamin stood, in the middle of his living room, legs trembling from the effort of holding him up without the chair for the first time in years. The newspaper shook in his hand. He drove himself to the workshop. The gate was locked. A crowd of reporters already swarmed the entrance, shouting questions at Adewale, who stood like a wall in front of his daughter. When Benjamin pushed through the mob, cameras flashed in his face. "Judge Hawthorne, why are you walking? Is the girl your secret love child? Did you accept bribes in the form of witchcraft?" He ignored them all, eyes only on LAmara. She was pale, clutching her father's hand, eyes wide with terror. Adewale's voice was raw. "They came at dawn. Police. They want to take LAmara for medical examination. They say she is being exploited." Benjamin felt the world crack open beneath his feet. Inside the courtyard, away from the lenses, Adewale rounded on him. "You promised no one would know," he roared. "Now they call my daughter a Shawa witch victim. They will lock her away in some government home." "I didn't leak the photos," Benjamin said, voice breaking. "I swear on my life." LAmara stepped between them, trembling. "Stop. Both of you." She looked up at Benjamin, eyes ancient again. "You have to choose now. Right now." "What are you talking about?" She pulled a folded letter from her dress pocket. "Official stationery, Judicial Service Commission seal. They sent this to Papa. If you resign today and leave the country for health reasons, they will drop all charges against us. They will say the photos were doctored, the walking a hoax. My father keeps his freedom. I stay with him. Everything goes quiet." Benjamin stared at the letter like it was poison. "And if I fight? They will take me," she whispered. "They will put me in a home, test me, parade me on television until the gift is dead. And they will destroy you. Disbar you. Maybe jail." Adewale's fists clenched. "Take their offer, Benjamin. Walk away. You have your legs. We have our lives. It is enough." Benjamin looked from father to daughter. The courtyard that had been their sanctuary now felt like a cage. He knelt, slowly, painfully, until he was eye level with LAmara. "Tell me the truth," he said quietly. "If I leave, will you be safe? Will you heal?" She tried to smile. Failed. "I will live," she said. "But I will never walk properly again. The gift dies when it is taken by force. Mama told me." Something inside Benjamin turned to ash. He stood, legs shaking worse than the first day he tried them. "Then I'm not leaving." He turned to the gate where the reporters still shouted. He walked, straight into the flashing cameras. Microphones thrust into his face. "Judge Hawthorne, did you fake your paralysis for sympathy?" He grabbed the nearest one. "Listen to me," he said, voice steady as Judgment Day. 3 months ago I could not feel my feet. Today I stand here because of that child. Call it miracle, call it grace, call it whatever you want. But if you touch one hair on her head, I will use every remaining day of my life to make sure the world knows exactly who tried to destroy a little girl for doing something good." Then he did something no one expected. He turned his back on the cameras, walked to LAmara, and lifted her into his arms like she was made of glass. "From this moment," he declared to the world, "LAmara Okeke is under my personal protection. Any action against her is an action against me. Come through me first." The reporters went silent. That night the Judicial Commission suspended him pending investigation. His bank accounts were frozen. His sister stopped answering calls. Old colleagues crossed the street to avoid him. At 2 a.m. Adewale woke to find Benjamin sitting on the floor beside LAmara's mattress, head in his hands. "I ruined you both," he whispered when Adewale sat beside him. "Everything you feared came true because of me." Adewale was quiet for a long time. "No," he said finally. "You gave us 43 days of joy we never thought possible. That is not ruin. That is the opposite." LAmara stirred in her sleep, reached out, and found Benjamin's hand without waking. She held on tight. Outside, the city raged and judged and waited to see who would break first. Inside the tiny workshop, 3 people clung to each other in the dark, listening to the sound of everything they had built together shattering. The city held its breath for 72 hours. Benjamin had not slept. He sat on the concrete floor of the workshop, back against the wall, LAmara's head in his lap. She drifted in and out of fever again. The stress had stolen the little strength she had clawed back. Adewale moved like a ghost, cooking nothing, answering no one, eyes fixed on the gate that rattled every time another reporter or police vehicle passed. On the third night the power went out. Only the kerosene lantern flickered between them. Benjamin's phone, now on its last 4%, lit up with a single message from an unknown number. Midnight. Alone. Victoria Island Jetty. Come if the child matters more than your name. No police. No lawyers. Final offer. He knew who it was. Daniel Okoye and the people who pulled his strings. The ones who could not allow a miracle to exist unless they controlled it. Adewale read the message over his shoulder. His voice was iron. You are not going. Benjamin looked down at Amara. She was awake now, eyes luminous in the lantern light. If I don't, he said quietly, they will come here with guns and papers and take her while we sleep. You know they will. Adewale's fist shook. Then we run. Tonight. My cousin has a truck. And live looking over our shoulders forever? Benjamin shook his head. No. I started this. I end it. Amara sat up slowly, wincing. You are not going alone. Yes, I am. He cupped her face the way he once cupped Lily's. Listen to me, little general. You gave me back my legs. Now let me use them to give you back your life. She started to cry. Silent, fierce tears. He kissed her forehead, then stood, straight and tall and unafraid for the first time in years, and walked out into the night. The jetty was deserted except for the slap of waves and 3 men waiting under a single street lamp. Okoye stood in the center, flanked by 2 silent figures in expensive suits. Benjamin walked the length of the wooden pier without limping once. Okoye smiled like a shark. Look at you. The miracle man himself. Benjamin stopped 5 feet away. What do you want? Simple, Okoye said, holding up a thick envelope. Your signed resignation. A public statement that the entire thing was a hoax staged for sympathy after your suspension. You leave the country tonight. The girl is placed in a discreet private facility, excellent care, best doctors. She'll want for nothing. And the world forgets this ever happened. Benjamin didn't flinch. And if I refuse? One of the suited men opened a tablet. A live video feed showed the outside of the workshop, right now. 2 unmarked vans. 6 armed men preparing to move in. Your choice, Okoye said softly. Your reputation and freedom, or the child's. The wind whipped cold across the water. Benjamin closed his eyes. He saw Amara's tiny hand on his knee the first morning. He heard her laugh when he took his first 3 steps. He felt her head on his shoulder under the mango tree. He opened his eyes. Film this, he told them. He took the envelope, tore it in half, then in half again, and let the pieces flutter into the black water. I choose the child, he said, loud enough for the hidden cameras they surely had. And I choose the truth. Whatever you do next will be seen by the entire country before sunrise. Okoye's smile vanished. You're willing to lose everything? I already found everything, Benjamin answered. 44 days ago in a courtyard behind the old market. Everything else is just noise. He turned his back on them and walked away. He was halfway down the jetty when the first gunshot cracked the night. He didn't flinch. Didn't run. Just kept walking, legs strong, heart steady. Because he knew what they didn't. Back at the workshop, Adewale's phone had buzzed at the exact same moment with a single text from a number he didn't recognize. Live stream starting in 3, 2, 1. Every major news channel, every blog, every WhatsApp group in Nigeria exploded with the same video. Judge Benjamin Hawthorne walking tall, tearing up the blackmail offer, choosing the child over his life. By the time Benjamin reached the gate of the workshop, the street was flooded, not with police vans but with people. Hundreds. Phones raised. Live streaming. Chanting Amara's name. Chanting his. A path opened. He walked through it like Moses through the sea. Inside the courtyard, Amara stood waiting, barefoot, frail, tears shining, held up by her father's arms. Benjamin dropped to his knees in front of her, not from weakness but from reverence. I chose you, he whispered. She touched his wet cheeks. I knew you would. Above them, the sky was full of camera flashes and stars. And for the first time in either of their lives, the world was on their side. 47 days after the promise, the sun rose red gold over Lagos, as though the sky itself had been holding its breath and finally let go. The courtyard behind the old market had become a cathedral. Hundreds stood outside the gate, journalists, mothers with babies on their backs, old men in prayer caps, university students live streaming, even a few ashamed prosecutors who had come to witness what they once tried to destroy. No one shouted. No one pushed. They simply waited, phones raised like candles at a vigil. Inside only 4 people moved. Benjamin stood barefoot on the warm concrete, wearing a simple white agbada Adewale had given him the night before. His legs no longer trembled. His eyes were clear, older, softer, unbreakable. Amara stood opposite him in a new sky-blue dress that reached her ankles, the first gift he had bought her with his own money after the accounts were unfrozen. She was thinner than any child should be, but her smile blazed brighter than the dawn. Adewale stood to the side, guitar slung across his chest, eyes shining with tears he refused to let fall. And on a small stool between them sat a tablet on speakerphone, screen glowing with the face of a 17-year-old girl in Toronto who had been crying happy tears for 12 straight hours. "Dad." Lily's voice cracked across the ocean. "I can see you. You're really standing." Benjamin's smile wobbled. "I promised I'd walk to you, baby. I'm practicing." Amara took one small step forward. Then another. Her legs shook but they held. She had not walked more than a few meters without help in weeks. Benjamin opened his arms. "Last day, little general," he whispered. "Let's finish what we started." She nodded, tears sliding free. They began to walk toward each other across the courtyard, slow and deliberate, the way two people walk down an aisle toward a vow they will never break. With every step Benjamin took, strength flowed out of him and into her, like the final notes of a song that had to be sung to the end. With every step Amara took, she grew straighter, lighter, the child she was always meant to be. 10 meters became 8. 8 became 5. The crowd outside fell utterly silent. At the center of the courtyard they met. Amara reached up. Benjamin knelt, meeting her halfway. She placed both hands on his cheeks, exactly as she had once placed them on his knees. "Thank you for letting me heal you," she whispered. He placed his hands over her legs one final time. "Thank you for letting me heal you back." Warmth blazed between them, visible now, gold and soft and alive. It rose like sunrise, spilled over the walls, touched every watching heart. Amara took the last step unaided and fell into his arms. Benjamin stood, lifting her high, spinning her once the way fathers spin daughters who have just learned to run. She laughed, bright, free, unbroken. And in that moment every phone screen in Nigeria caught the same impossible image. The paralyzed judge and the poor little girl who had traded her strength for his, dancing together under a mango tree while a nation wept and cheered at once. Later that morning, in the same courtroom where it all began, a new hearing was held. The Chief Justice herself presided. Benjamin walked, unassisted, to the center of the floor. Amara walked beside him, holding his hand. Adewale followed, head high. Lily watched on a screen from Toronto, passport already stamped for Christmas. The charges against Adewale were formally struck from the record forever. The suspension against Benjamin was lifted with a public apology from the Judicial Council, broadcast live. Then the Chief Justice did something no one expected. She stepped down from the bench, took the gavel in her own hand and handed it to Amara. "Justice," she said, voice trembling, "sometimes looks like a 12-year-old girl who refused to let the world stay cruel. Ring the gavel, my dear. Let it mean something new." Amara looked at Benjamin. He nodded, eyes shining. She brought the gavel down, clear, true, final. The sound rang like a bell across the nation. 6 months later. A modest house on the outskirts of Lagos, bought with Benjamin's savings and Adewale's growing business. 2 mango trees in the yard. A swing hung from the strongest branch. Lily, now 18 and taller than Amara by a head, pushed her little sister high into the blue. "Again?" Amara shrieked, legs kicking strong and sure. Benjamin and Adewale sat on the veranda, watching their daughters play. Adewale strummed the guitar softly. Benjamin's arm rested across the older man's shoulders, brother to brother. Lily caught the swing, leaned over Amara's shoulder, and whispered loud enough for the whole yard to hear. "Race you to the gate, miracle girl." Amara's eyes sparkled. "You're on, big sister." They took off running, barefoot, laughing, hair flying like banners of joy. Benjamin felt the old ache rise, the one that would never fully leave, because love this size always carries a scar. He looked at Adewale. "We made it," he said, voice rough with wonder. Adewale smiled, slow and deep. "No, my friend. Love made it. We just stopped getting in the way." That night, under the same sky that had watched a courtroom laugh at a child's impossible promise, Benjamin stood on the veranda and felt the breeze on legs that should never have walked again. Amara slipped her hand into his. "Still warm?" she asked, the old ritual. He squeezed her fingers. "Burning," he answered. And somewhere across the ocean, Lily texted a single heart emoji that lit up 3 phones at once. Love at last. Unexpected. Unbreakable. Complete. Final reflection question for listeners. If a ragged little girl walked up to you today and offered to heal your deepest wound at the cost of her own strength, would you let her? And if you're honest, whose face do you see when you imagine saying yes? Drop your comment below. I read every single one, and so does someone who needs to know they're not alone tonight. Thank you for walking these 47 days with us. The miracle was never the walking. It was the loving.